With a wild 2 days of the NBA draft now behind us, I want to look at each team and go over their picks and go over who won the NBA draft, who lost the NBA draft, and realistically go over some other categories as well, filling in those other teams, organizing every single pick. And we're going to be diving and exploring all of that here on this episode of Swish City. I am Bruce Velez. If you missed our videos yesterday and the day before going over the picks, over my instant reactions, definitely go check those ones out if you missed those. But today we're going to be diving in and looking at each team and how they did. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's start talking about it. So in the NBA draft, there were two teams that had no selection here on both of these days, and they were both in the Western Conference. And I want to get those over before we dive into any of the teams. Those are the Houston Rockets and the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets owned no picks in the draft going into it, and even with all the movement with second rounders and first rounders, still did not get into the draft to make a selection. The Rockets obviously had the 10th overall pick from the Phoenix Suns, but they traded it back to them in the Kevin Durant deal, in which the Suns took Kaman Malawach, which we'll get into a little bit later. But those two teams did not have a selection, and I wanted to get out of those ones out the way first. But let's dive into our first category next. So the first category that we're going to dive into is the teams that I really don't know much about their prospects, or their prospects didn't really move me as much. Now, I'm not going to put them as clear losers because these teams could kind of surprise me here, but let's dive in and let's explore that next. Now, the first team we're going to be talking about is the Los Angeles Clippers, and they had two selections here in the draft. They selected Yannick Koenig-Niederhauser from Penn State and Kobe Sanders out of Nevada. Now, Kobe Sanders was involved in a deal with the Knicks where they moved back and selected their player, who we'll get into in a little bit. But for these two selections, I really don't know much about them. Kobe Sanders, I didn't do much detail into second round picks, and Yannick Koenig-Niederhauser didn't really move me as much as a selection. With guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner and Maxime Reynaud being on the board, I thought that would have been a better selection for the Clippers to pair alongside Ivica Zubac, because they did need a center, but they went with Koenig-Niederhauser. So we'll have to see how that moves me, but ultimately I don't think the Clippers here were that great and don't really know much about their players. The Warriors, they took two second-round picks, and they had a deal with the Phoenix Suns, which gave them 52 and 59. They ended up moving from 59, I believe, up to 57, but they ended up getting Alex Tui, and they also ended up getting from Australia, and they also got Will Richard from the Florida Gators. I don't really know much about them. Will Richard obviously playing on the championship team, but I did not watch Australian basketball, so I don't know much about Alex Tui. But the Warriors have had, very, very solid success drafting in the late second round here over these last couple of seasons, selecting Trace Jackson Davis a couple years ago, then now selecting Quentin Post just last season. So maybe these guys do spark up, but I don't know much about them, so I don't want to say that they're complete losers, but obviously these guys could pan out, and I could be saying they were winners down the line. Alrighty, and then the next three teams are the final teams in this category, and they're all in the Eastern Conference. It is the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Bucks. The Boston Celtics selected Hugo Gonzalez out of Spain, and even though you can see all the Celtics gear in the back here, I did not do much research on him. I did dive into him a little bit, and he does look like he could fit into Boston, but obviously it looks like he's going to be a little bit of a project piece for this team, and they ultimately did want Rasheer Fleming at pick 32 with their second selection, but when the Suns leapfrogged them and took him at pick 31, they ended up trading back, which resulted in getting some extra draft capital, which is nice, but they took Amari Williams and Max Shulga, who are looking to both be on two-way contracts to help them save some salary. So it's not the worst draft for the Boston Celtics, obviously, but I don't really know much about their players. Amari Williams, a pretty solid passing big and could be a solid screener, but he's a little bit older. So I don't think technically it's a loss for the Boston Celtics, but it's definitely not a immediate win, and we're going to have to see how these guys can really pan out, because if it does, then like I said, like the Warriors, they could really change me. Similar with the Knicks and the Bucks. The Knicks selected Muhammad Dawara, I believe is how you pronounce his name, or Dawara. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. I don't know much about him. And for the Knicks, picking at pick 50, I mean, they do need some big man help, so getting a guy like him could be solid, but I don't know much about him. And then the Bucks, obviously, were apparently getting this pick watched by Giannis, and they took Boljub or Bogolub Markovich, which once again I didn't do much research on him, so I don't want to say that he's a home run pick or it's a complete loss. But they did draft someone that Giannis apparently did like, and is a coming from his last name seems like he played in Eurobasketball, so for it to make their star happy, I guess it's a good move, but I'm not going to say that they won the draft or that it was anything better than that. I think it just kind of is eh. Alrighty, and then the next batch of teams here are the teams right before the winners here. These guys are teams where I liked their draft here, right? But it's not a complete amazing home run swing, right? And I wouldn't call them winners. And the first team is the Lakers. They got Adu Thero from Arkansas, and he is an absolute crazy athletic beast. He's going to fit in well alongside this young core that they're trying to build and be another solid wing defender alongside LeBron James and Luka Doncic. He has an incredible dunk package, and for the Lakers to be able to move up from pick 55 all the way up to 36 to be able to draft him, that was some great movement from their team and their new management. So I like that. The Grizzlies also fall in this category. They moved up with the Blazers, which we'll get into a little bit later here, where they took Cedric Coward, which I think obviously is probably the most I guess high potential piece here in the lottery, but the one with the also most question marks if he can pan out due to his injuries and him playing at D3 for a majority of his college tenure. But a lot of people do say that he can be a star in the NBA, and if the Grizzlies can strike out on this and add another guy who can be a versatile defender and can kind of be that third star along Jaren Jackson Jr. for the future to replace Desmond Bane by adding that size and wing depth while still being able to get some shooting later on in the years coming, I really like this move for them. They also got two other picks, I believe Javon Small and they got Jemai Mazchek. Javon Small, I don't know where he went. I don't know where these guys went to college off the top of my head, excuse me, but they both are late picks in the second round, and I will tell you that the Grizzlies, as we all know, have struck in great on second round talent and late lottery picks. So if they feel confident in drafting these guys, then I feel confident that they have a chance of panning out and actually being involved in this rotation. So I like that for them. Alrighty, and then the next team is the Utah Jazz, and I really like what they did here in the draft. Now, obviously, there are some question marks. As of right now, Ace Bailey is going to be reporting to Salt Lake tomorrow, so that is a good sign, but there were obviously some question marks around Ace Bailey, but not only just that, some uncertainty on what teams he was not willing to go to. It didn't seem like Utah was a squad that he was willing to or wanted to go to in the draft, but that does not matter. Obviously, they took him in for a team in Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge, a new GM. This is a slam dunk pick, right? They tanked, tried to get a top 3 pick to get a Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and they ultimately failed by landing at pick 5. But Ace Bailey fell into their lap, and they're not going to turn away from that just because of the character issues. They're going to take the best talent available, and for a team in Utah that's a small market, that's a great piece to go out and add. It's all going to see what kind of Ace Bailey we do get here in Utah and how the team does look around him, because they do have a lot of other young players, but also some veteran contracts as well, like Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, so Lauri Markkanen. So it'll be nice to see. It will be interesting to see what Utah does here as well. They also got Walter Clayton in the first round, where they traded up, and I really like Walter Clayton. Once again, went to Florida, was that big-time shot creator, is not afraid to shy away from those shots, and he's a veteran guy, right? A little bit of an older guard coming into this guard room alongside a bunch of young shot creators, right? Once again, kind of puts the writing on the wall for guys like Colin Sexton and maybe even Jordan Clarkson, or even potentially some of their other younger guys that they do have on their roster, because they have Keontae George and Isaiah Collier as well. But a guy like Walter Clayton is someone that's not going to shy away from taking a big shot, is going to be confident in doing that, and those are the type of players Utah needs, right? They've last 2 drafts have taken 3 picks in the first round, and they've all been kind of like project pieces or guys that they think that can potentially develop into being key pieces or core guys, but they haven't really gotten those it factor guys, those guys with that potential to really kind of take over and I guess really change their direction for the main front. And Austin Ainge said that he wanted to do that in his introductory press conference, that they're going to bring some winning and try to change that motive. So I really like the 2 selections there. They also got John Tonje as well. I don't know much about him, but with these 2 selections for the Utah Jazz. I do like it. And then the other team as well was the Minnesota Timberwolves. They kind of drafted more for need. They took 2 centers here in the draft in John Berenger, and they also took Rocco Zigakarsi from Australia. Now, I don't know much about Rocco. John Berenger, I know he's obviously from France. He's a French big. He is one of the better defenders, has a high motor, shot blocker. He is going to be very interesting for this Timberwolves team, and I think is kind of indication for the Timberwolves here that with Julius Randle on this player option, Naz Reid on his player option, and Rudy Gobert having a very expensive contract, that the Timberwolves are trying to still add some of that center depth because they know they're going to lose at least someone, and maybe that is, Naz Reid in free agency, or maybe that is a sign and trade involving Julius Randle, or maybe even involving a trade with Rudy Gobert, because it was rumored that he was potentially in a deal evolved around Kevin Durant when his trade rumors were sparkling before he got sent to Houston. So if that's the case, maybe this is a replacement, or maybe down the line in a year or two when Gobert does get a little bit older and that contract does look a little bit scary and the Timberwolves are pressed against the second apron a little bit and Berenger really steps up, that's someone they can kind of move off of. Zakarski is a little bit more of a passing offensive big. So yeah, kind of filling out those needs of potentially some roster spots down the line if these guys pan out. And I really like that for the Timberwolves, obviously, not really going at other positions like wings or guards because they're kind of stacked there and have drafted there previously, and filling out their center core is going to be a little interesting. Alrighty, and now we have the Sixers here coming up next. They are a team that I think did pretty solid. Obviously, we're rumored to take Ace Bailey round 3, rumored to potentially trade out the pick, but they actually do select VJ Edgecombe, which was leaning more towards draft day that was going to be the obvious answer. Edgecombe is kind of that off-ball guy, that slasher, that cutter that's going to be able to fit alongside Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCann with them in the ball in their hands, and even potentially Joel Embiid or Paul George, depending on what they have out there. They also got Janiah Broome from Auburn, and they did have Andre Drummond accept his player option today, and they declined Jared Butler's, but they are working a deal with Justin Edwards. So reshuffling of some of their contracts there. The Sixers are definitely going to be an interesting team, obviously going into next season with some of their team contracts and player options and younger guys that they do have under the roster. I'm very interested to see what they do. Janiah Broome is kind of some insurance for them in the center department, depending if guys do get injured or if he does succeed. I expect him to be on a two-way potentially. But VJ Edgecombe, I think the Sixers went better fit, and even if Paul George and Joel Embiid don't work out and you do look to eventually reset, I think him kind of slotting in at that small forward position along those guys is a little bit of a better look for the Sixers, so I do like it. The next team is the Detroit Pistons. They did not have a first-round pick. They had a second-round pick. They took Chaz Lanier, which just makes sense. Absolutely insane volume shooter off the dribble, catch and shoot, and he's just going to fit in perfectly alongside a guy in Cade Cunningham. You saw last season with the insertion of Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser, all their development as well. The offense looked absolutely fluid with Cade being able to run the offense, but have those shooters on the wings and be able to kind of deliver and give them that three-point volume that was able to make them contend, right? And just getting another guy like that, especially on a good value contract as a second-round pick, I think is very, very key for a Detroit Pistons team. And I'm interested to see what that kind of means for them in free agency or potentially even down the line with some other moves if a guy like Chaz Lanier can really boost his stock. Another one as well is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They did a solid job. Wouldn't call them winners, but they drafted for fit similar to the Timberwolves here with taking Tyrese Proctor. They didn't have a first-round pick, but Proctor falling all the way to them in the second round was key because they have a guy in Ty Jerome who is going to be commanding a lot of money in free agency, and they are trying to set some salary to bring him back, but with this indication of drafting a guy in Proctor, it does seem like maybe that's not the case. A little bit of a combo guard. He's played shooting guard, has played point guard, but 6'5", a little bit older as well, so can kind of fit right into that Cleveland Cavaliers bench unit. And for the Cavs, they obviously do have a lot of guards and playmaking ability in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, but having one to run that secondary unit is key, and ever since Ricky Rubio left and retired, they hadn't really had that, so getting one of those guys in Tyrese Proctor to kind of replace a guy in Ty Jerome, I think is going to be very, very fun for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They also got Selabu Niang, which I don't know much about him, but once again, probably a two-way guy for the Cleveland Cavaliers, someone to be kind of interested in if you are them. But yeah, Tyrese Proctor, a very good pick. Alrighty, and then we got three more teams in this category. Sticking with that Central Division, they did pretty solid here in the draft. We got the Pacers, they got Cam Jones, and they got Taylor Peter. I don't know much about Taylor Peter. He was their original pick. They did get Cam Jones from the Spurs, which originally in my video yesterday I thought he was on the Spurs, so that's kind of tough. But for Cam Jones going to the Pacers, he is a guy that played with Tyler Kolek and Oso Gudaro last year or 2 years ago with Marquette. Then this year stuck when they went into the draft and played a little bit more of a point guard role. But he can be a scoring guard off the bench with Tyrese Halliburton obviously being out this season. He's just going to kind of be, I think, like a two-way guy for them, but potentially grow into a nice three-point volume shooter on the wing for them in a couple seasons with, the still development of Tyrese Halliburton and this young core kind of being there. So I like what they did in this draft here for the Pacers. The Thunder also as well are another team. They did really solid. Obviously, the rich are going to get richer. The NBA champions get Thomas Sorber, one of the best defenders in this draft class, which with a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, who obviously is on a longer term contract, and when these younger stars get older will be kind of one of the first dominoes to go out. Having another replacement piece in the works is key. They also, once again, are a team that get Thomas Sorber, similar to Nikola Topic, who dealt with an injury. He sat out all of it last season. Sorber got injured this year in college, so drafting him gives them the option to maybe rest him a little bit, make sure he gets 100%, which I think is very key because they don't need him to be an impact player immediately. I think it's a best fit for Sorber, and he's already doing those TikTok dances in college, and he's just going to fit right into that team. The one question with the Thunder is, though, with drafting Thomas Sorber and also taking their other second-round pick, which was Brooks Barnhinzer, they now have two roster spots that they need to cut unless they don't bring back A.J. Mitchell and Jalen Williams on those team contracts. So very interesting, something to keep an eye on with this Thunder team. But Brooks Barnhizer is just like a hustle, do-it-all type of guy, and if he is on a two-way contract for this team, I think that's very exciting because he kind of brings that Thunder emotion and kind of what they really do value on the gritty end of the defensive side of the basketball. Thomas Sorber, once again, one of my favorite prospects in this draft class, and I definitely will be getting a Sorber Thunder jersey for sure. And then the last team is the Wizards. They did make a move bringing in C.J. McCollum earlier this week and then trading out Jordan Poole and basically draft that Jordan Poole replacement in Trey Johnson. Now, I wanted them to get Jeremiah Fears or Trey Johnson. Trey Johnson's a little bit of a better fit, I thought. And then once they traded Poole, I liked that move even more. One of the best shooters and shot creators in this class, is going to fit perfectly alongside Bub Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Keyshawn George, Chris Middleton, whatever they do have with this roster. And I think it was an absolute home run of a pick. One of the guys that I had as a top 5, top 6 value, and I think is going to be, if not a star player, a very solid role player and quality starter in the NBA for many years to come. Then you look at a guy in their other two picks in Will Richard, which they got from the Jazz in that trade with Walter Clayton. He is or Will Riley, excuse me. Will Richard went to the Warriors, but Will Riley from Illinois. Don't really know much about him that well, but another wing for the Washington Wizards to bring in. Then they also got Jameer Watkins as well, coming in as a defensive stopping guard on a second-round pick, most likely going to be a two-way guy, but someone to keep an intrigue on and could be, a defensive, scrappy, disruptive playmaker alongside Bub Carrington with his playmaking, and that offensive Trey Johnson could be a lethal combo if all three do pan out. All right, so now we're getting into the final two tiers, the winners and the losers, what you guys are listening for. And with the winners and the losers, I have 8 winners, and 2 of them are basically just gimmies because they were the number 1 and number 2 overall picks, but we'll get those over the way first real quick. The Mavs getting Cooper Flagg obviously makes them a winner, landing the best player in the draft and filling a hole, and especially not only just in the roster, but in the hearts of the fans for losing Luka Doncic is going to be nice. With Kyrie Irving coming back, Anthony Davis, Daniel Gafford on extension, and whatever other moves this team makes, they're going to be absolutely fun to watch. And then obviously Dylan Harper being the second overall pick, the best probably available prospect outside of Cooper Flagg, obviously. I really like his point guard play, his downhill attack. He's going to work absolutely fantastic. Probably the best pairing you could get alongside Victor Wembanyama for the future. And obviously we can worry about the fit now with De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, and all of that. But in the years down the line, if you looked at a guy in Dylan Harper being so successful with another big, and you questioned, obviously, well, what could that have been with Victor Wembanyama? You don't have to worry about that issue. Those other contracts can be moved later on, and you can obviously have that success not only just now with De'Aaron Fox, but also with Dylan Harper in that legacy in 5-10 years as well. So those guys, alongside the Spurs, they got Carter Bryant, who just the rich get richer, similar to the Thunder. Just a perfect 3-and-D wing. This is a perfect spot for him because there's guys like Harrison Barnes who could be a great mentor for him. Jeremy Sohan and Keldon Johnson are already in that wing room as well, so he's not going to be commanded to be that ready of an impact player, which a lot of people do think that he might, even though he is probably one of the better players with the highest floor where he's going to be at least very successful as a role guy. That might take some time. So with him going to the Spurs, I think that's a great fit as well for him to just not only get some great mentorship from Harrison Barnes, learn to be a little bit of a better shooter, but be an excellent defender on the wing alongside a guy in Victor Wembanyama. And I think this kind of means maybe down the line for some of these other guys in San Antonio, if Bryant steps up, that their time can be shortened soon. All right, so let's get into the real 6 winners here. The first one, now these are not in particular order, but I just have them just written down. So the first one we're going to be discussing is the Sacramento Kings. They got Nick Clifford and they got Maxime Reynaud. 2 needs that they desperately had to have for their roster. Nick Clifford obviously coming in as an older prospect here, but a gritty 3-and-D wing. And what does Sacramento need? Wings and defense. He is going to fit right in. And for a team that still wants to win and still be competitive, this is the type of move you make. Maxime Reynaud as well, an older big stretch rim protector that can hit threes. He can play alongside Sabonis. He could play substituting as Sabonis, and that's been a major issue for the Sacramento Kings squad, is not having a backup big that can play interior defense. Maxime Reynaud can do that alongside a guy in Nick Clifford. They did trade up to get the pick to get Nick Clifford and took their own pick with Maxime Reynaud, but the Kings, really, really solid draft. Really, really liked it. The Suns, another team that I really, really liked from the Pacific Division. They obviously had the 10th overall pick and from the Kevin Durant trade, and that was kind of the make it or break it for this Kevin Durant deal. And luckily for them, Kaman Malawach, someone that I thought was going to go in the top potentially 8, nowhere near did he fall to 10 because I thought the Raptors weren't going to take him, fell into their lap. They got him. Not only that, but they had a big trade involving Mark Williams on draft night, but that doesn't count. But with the draft, getting Malawach, probably the best big here. Obviously a little bit of a raw talent, going to need some time to develop, but getting Mark Williams gives you that insurance, and now you have Malawach, who's going to come in and potentially be that beast that you thought you had the vision with DeAndre Ayton a couple seasons ago, with a hungrier guy ready to play with some experience already playing in the Olympics with the South Sudanese team just last Olympics. And then you got 2 second-round picks as they moved around in the draft after having 52 and 59, made multiple moves, sold off a bunch of second-round picks, but jumped all the way to the first round and got first pick in the second round, and got Rasheer Fleming, 3-and-D wing that's just absolutely insane, someone that a lot of people had going in the first round that slipped. He was the ideal pick, the number 1 guy that everyone wanted and was trying to trade up to get, and the Suns were able to secure that. Not only that, they were able to nab another pick while doing other moves, and in that pick took Kobe Bryant, the best shooter in this class. And even though the Suns do have a lot of shooting guards, and that's a little bit of a question, I do think he has that potential to grow, and with them looking to make moves on the horizon, I do think that he'll have a bigger path to grow with some of those guys out of there. So with the Suns, 3 selections, a team that a lot of people thought were in the dark, in the dust, had failed in the drafts the last couple of seasons, really changed their motive around, and I really, really like that for them. And then I just realized this now, but the next 4 winners are all 4 teams from the same division. They're all in the Southeast. We'll start off with the Orlando Magic. They came out as big winners, getting Jace Richardson, once again, a player and fit that they desperately need. But not only just that, he slipped. He was someone that a lot of people thought could be a high lottery talent. He fell all the way down to pick 25, which is just insane value. Now, obviously, there are some question marks at 6 foot. Will he be able to be that great? He's a smaller offensive creator, not the best defender, but that's what Orlando needed, right? They went and got shooting with Desmond Bane, but there were still question marks of they still need a backup point guard. They still need a creator. They still need some more shooting, and they solved that issue 100% by getting a guy in Jace Richardson. I think this is just an immediate A-plus pick. But not only that, they traded up to 32 once the Celtics saw they couldn't get Rasheer Fleming, and they got Noah Penda, who is just a great versatile defensive wing from France, who, as we all know with the Orlando Magic, love their wings. Going to be going in with Caleb Houston, Tristan Da Silva, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner. Maybe this is a telling tale of Jonathan Isaac maybe getting traded as well from this team, which would help them shed some salary and getting another wing that's a little bit younger in. But even if not, that's just incredibly insane for this Orlando Magic team to have so much versatility at the wing position and at the guard position with now these shooters and scorers. and I really like this move for them. The Heat, they got Kaspers Yakuchonis, another player similar to Jace Richardson that did fall because not a lot of teams needed guards, to the Miami Heat of all teams at pick 20. We all know what the Heat need. They need a playmaker, a guy that can set up their offense because Tyler Hero is a little bit better off the ball, and they found that just once again kind of falling into their lap. Their only selection here in the NBA draft, and it's an absolute home run. Yakuchonis at 6'8", not only is just going to be a great value and have that upside of potential, but for the Miami Heat, a team that is great in player development, I think is just going to exceed those levels and expectations that maybe some teams thought that he couldn't do on their roster. Then the last two teams in this division, the Hawks, they got Asa Newell, and you'll figure out why they're big winners because we'll figure out and talk about the losing team that traded with them. But they moved from pick 13 and dropped and got to pick 23 and got the same guy that they wanted. Not only just that, got an unprotected first round pick. Absolutely insane. And Asa Newell fits not only because he went to school at the University of Georgia and the Hawks drafted him, but he's just a great toolsy fit for their team, right? Complete another power forward. Losing DeAndre Hunter, they still wanted another wing, right? They were still interested in that. But now adding him alongside a core of Jalen Johnson, Zachary Rizah-Shea, and playing alongside Porzingis and Onyeka Okongwu, this is going to be a great team of defenders around Trae Young and Dyson Daniels, but also some great lob threats and just lengthy players to just run up and down the court. I'm really excited with Atlanta. And then lastly, the Hornets, team that made the most picks, one of the most picks here in the draft. They got 4 selections. Con Kneppel, great connection, went to Duke, now going to play in Charlotte. That's just great. Fits in well once again alongside LaMelo as a scorer, as a shooter, as a passer. Now they're basically all offense because they also got, Liam McNeely with pick 29, which was acquired via the Suns in that Mark Williams deal, but that's kind of cool. And they got their Dalton Connect, replacement when they try to trade Mark Williams now and Liam McNeely. So more offense, more scoring on the wing for LaMelo and Brandon Miller. That's not obviously going to hurt. Then they got Ryan Kalkbrenner. They figured out their center issue, a rim runner, defensive beast, shot blocker. He's going to fit in really well alongside Musa Diabate and Yusuf Nurkic and whatever they decide to do with their center rotation. Then they also got Zion James, who not only went to Duke as well and is Con Kneppel's teammate, but is just an athletic freak and is going to be crazy alongside those guys. He's one of the players that is a little bit younger and, playing at Duke alongside Tyrese Proctor, Con Kneppel, Common Malawach, all these, top tier picks, 3 top 10 picks, and a great veteran in Proctor setting up the offense. He didn't get the most burn, but for a Charlotte team that once again has potential to be better, but can also have a guy that can take a couple years to develop, and if he does pan out, can change the franchise, is worth it. This is an absolute home run. So the Hornets did a really good job. The Southeast Division, right? They haven't been that great these last couple seasons. They've only had really the Heat, maybe the Magic with Vucevic and stuff were middling back in those days before they got Paolo Banchero. The Hawks with Trae Young were, in the Eastern Conference Finals 1 year, but then, have been middling. The Wizards have never been that great these last couple seasons post Bradley Beal. The Hornets have had potential but haven't been able to reach it due to injuries. It's looking pretty bright now. The Paolo Banchero led team that did great in the playoffs now is Desmond Bane and just hit some home runs. The Heat, after trading Jimmy Butler, if they can restructure some contracts and potentially even get Jonathan Kuminga, could be a game changer in the Southeast Division. And now the Hawks with Kristaps Porzingis, this great defensive, lengthy wing group, and the Wizards with some upside potential, and the Hornets now with some great shooting alongside some stars. It's definitely going to be some bright, fun times in the Southeast Division soon. And now we're at the losers. Fortunately, some teams win and some teams lose. These ones just didn't do it for me. So we have 5 losers to go over, and one of the losers is going to be one of the teams you expect, and it is the Portland Trail Blazers. They took Hansen Yang with pick 16 after they traded out of Cedric Howard. Now, they did get an additional first from Orlando, which was involved in the Desmond Bane trade, and some seconds to move back. And if they felt confident in Hansen Yang, which post-draft, obviously, of initial reaction of a lot of people having him mocked as a second-round pick, everyone is just kind of like, okay, maybe he does have that potential. But for the sheer shock factor of this move, I just think it has to be a loser at this moment, right? Because there's so much of an uncertainty now. Once again, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even this year, I could be biting my own words and saying that I was wrong, and I will when it happens. But at this point, it just doesn't really make so much sense. They obviously have a logjam at center as well, taking Klingon last year, having Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton. So they will be involved in making some more moves out there on the trade market. So they can give Yang the opportunity to develop. But for the sheer factor that, it was the unknown pick, and the Blazers, have maybe not some big needs here, but could have went with a scoring piece, could have went with another wing defender. There were, I think, better options, in my opinion, on the board for them at pick 16. And even if they took Cedric Howard and just kind of banked on it, I think that would have been even a little bit of a better direction. So I don't necessarily know. The Blazers are there for me. Next is the Pelicans, and I like the Pelicans picks, right? Like, I don't mind Jeremiah Fears. I really like him. I liked him going to the Pelicans earlier on. I liked Derek Queen, right? And obviously the Pelicans really like Derek Queen. But for the trade for Derek Queen is the questionable thing, and also with the fit. Now, they also got Micah Peavy. I don't know much about Micah Peavy, so I'm not going to really speak on him. He could really pan out, and I don't want to really put him in this loser category because he could actually be a nice piece for them. But I think I'm more mad at the front office, and it's obviously Joe Dumars, who I wasn't around, or I was around, but I was younger. I wasn't covering the NBA when he was, the GM of the Pistons, but he wasn't great from what I've heard. And he's clearly not doing a great job with this Pelicans team, right? Like, post that CJ McCollum, Jordan Poole trade, I was like, okay, it does make sense because now they have the option to run Jordan Poole when DeJounte Murray comes back. That's okay. Like, it makes kind of sense. But now with Jeremiah Fears and Jordan Poole, it's just weird. Like, both kind of need the ball in their hands, and you have DeJounte Murray. Like, DeJounte Murray's also out, so, like, I get it. But then, like, when he comes back, like, who are you benching? Like, you're benching a guy you just traded for. That doesn't really make much sense, right? And then Derek Queen, like, what's his fit next to Zion, right? Like, is Yves Missy getting benched now, but you need the rebounding, but then you're going to be lacking the size? I feel like a lot of people make the comparison of Derek Queen to a little bit of a Zion, a little bit of an overweight guy, kind of tweener 4-5, a little bit more offensive gifted, not really the best defender. And that's, like, the question mark here. Like, do they have a Zion trade kind of lined up, right? Is there something in the works with Zion getting moved, and that's why they traded up for Derek Queen? And then you mentioned, I haven't even mentioned the worst part is they traded a very, very valuable pick. They traded a 2026 unprotected first-round pick to move up 10 slots. Now, obviously, if you like Derek Queen, that's something, but put protections on it. Try to not give up an unprotected next-year pick, because you look at the Pelicans last year, they were the 14th seed, right? They were not good. And they had a lot of injuries, but they've always had injuries, right? So when you look at this team, in my opinion, it's just a little scary to see them do this, because I think they're going to be a bottom 3 or 5 team in the West next year. And it's also the better part, not the worst part, but the better part of them are Milwaukee, which Milwaukee, as all signs of now of recording, are keeping Giannis, but who knows if Giannis comes, or if halfway through the season they decide to trade Giannis, what happens? Or if they do keep Giannis and the team's still not good because Damian Lillard's not there and they lose some key free agents, and that pick jumps. You looked at the Mavs pick this year, that could be the number 1, number 2, number 3 overall pick, and it's just handed to Atlanta. It's just wild. It's just wild. Once again, I like the moves. Like, I like Derek Queen. I like Jeremiah Fears. I think a Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen combo could work. I just don't see it working with the pieces that they do have. So once again, right, if they make moves, right, if they trade a Zion, if they trade a DeJounte Murray, if they are able to make those moves, then I could see it happening. But not to mention, Zion can't really stay healthy. DeJounte Murray also really can't stay healthy. DeJounte Murray's now been on the Hawks and the Pelicans the past 2 years. They're going to trade him again, and he's injured right now. I don't know. I really don't know what the Pelicans are doing, man. It's just confusing. And it's the Pelicans, too. It's the Pelicans. Alrighty, and then the last 3 teams are in the East. The first one we're going to talk about is the Raptors. They drafted Colin Murray-Boyles and Elijah Martin. I don't know much about Elijah Martin. I know he played at Florida, second-round pick. Colin Murray-Boyles, solid interior defender. Just a Masai Ujiri pick, right? Masai Ujiri loves these wings. He loves these defensive pieces. That's what Colin Murray-Boyle is. And you saw how Colin Murray-Boyle's reaction was to getting drafted to Toronto. He's clearly not pleased. And you see what Toronto's reaction to the draft was. They fired Masai Ujiri. So, yeah, I don't know. Toronto, they have Brandon Ingram, R.J. Barrett, Jakob Podol, Colin Murray-Boyles, Scotty Barnes, Jonathan Moe, and Jacoby Walter. And then they have shooting guards and Quickly and Grady Dick. Those are the only two that can play off the ball. No one else really can. So it's just a little bit confusing on their roster construction. And I'm interested to see, once again, I think they're a team like New Orleans that has some moves maybe lined up, but we'll have to keep an eye out. But I just don't really like how the roster is being built right now for Toronto. And then the Bulls, they took two players. They took Noah Asenge, who a little bit of a project, younger piece, and if he pans out, that's good. Maybe this is the Bulls signaling we're going to kind of reset and go a little bit younger. Maybe they have a deal lined up for Patrick Williams, but a lot of people are saying he's just going to be Patrick Williams, and I hope that's not what he is, but for the Bulls, I feel like going a little bit more of a immediate impact, not immediate impact, but a guy that can make an impact kind of as a helping option right away is a little bit better, but if this pick pans out to be someone insane in Noah Senge, where he turns into be a Giannis or just an absolute, star player alongside Matas Buzelis, then I'll eat my words. They also took Lachlan Olbrich as well, and I failed to mention that, but I don't know much about him. And he was he was pick 55 in the deal that they traded back with the Lakers. Probably be a two-way guy. And then the last team, probably the most confusing team, the whole NBA draft, even though some teams made some questionable picks, the Brooklyn Nets. Because all the buzz going up to the draft was that the Brooklyn Nets had 4 first-round picks. And they were going to try and trade up. They were going to try and make a move. And then they got a 5th pick the day before the draft involved in the Kristaps Porzingis deal. And that made it even more enticing for the Nets to potentially trade up or package some of these picks. But the Nets, right before the draft, had Shams Charania come on ESPN and say that at pick 8, they're planning to take all 5 of their picks today. And that was the most confusing thing. Obviously, Ace Bailey had gone by that point, so there was no need to really trade up. But a lot of people were confused. And then their picks came through. And even more people were confused. With the 8th selection, they took a Yegor Demon, who a lot of people are either high or very low on. He had a very, very polarizing draft stock. Some people thought he was a 20th guy. Some people thought he was probably 12th or 13th. He's a solid playmaker, big body frame, very resemblant of like a Josh Giddey type of guy. Can't really shoot the ball, and that's the big question, is if he can't develop the jump shot, what's he truly going to be? But not only did they take a reach on a guy like that, who they potentially could have, traded back to get, or, took in a guy in Malawach at 8 and then potentially traded up with some of their other seconds to go up and get a guy in Demon. With their second pick, they took Nolan Traore, another point guard, who needs to have the ball in his hands. He's a little bit better of a defender, but another point guard who's a playmaker. With their third pick, they took Drake Powell, which was the pick that they should have taken. One of the guys that I do like for them. Solid wing defender, needs some time to grow, can hopefully develop a shot on the perimeter. He's a little bit of a project piece. Someone, if we're the Nets, you're trying to be bad the next couple seasons, you can go through the ranks to try to develop him and turn him into a quality role player or a starter. And then with back-to-back picks, they took Ben Saraf and Danny Wolf. And I like Danny Wolf. I thought he fell really late in the draft at pick 27. Solid passing big man. Solid rebounder as well. But once again, another passing guy. And Ben Saraf, can you guess what he does? He's a point guard at 6'7" that can pass and play make. So the Nets, with 5 of their picks, took 4 guys that can all pass, can all play make, but all need the ball in their hands. And the best part is, they have a sign and trade option or an extension with Cam Thomas. And what does Cam Thomas do? need the ball in his hands to score. So unless I'm confused and the Nets have some stuff cooked up down the line, I'm very confused what they're doing. It seems like, and I tweeted this out, that they're running like a depth chart of quarterback one, trying to see who's going to be the developed point guard, right? But it seems like if you're the Nets and this was the move you would try to go down, you'd want to draft a potential starting five, right? Imagine, even if you took Jaeger Redemon at 8, right? Even if you took that reach, right? But at pick 19, you took a scoring guard, right? And then you take Drake Powell. You could still even take, a guy in Danny Wolf. Maybe you go a Ryan Kalkbrenner because he's a little bit of a better interior defender, right? And then post-draft, when you have all 5 young guys that look like they can fill in your team and play in roles, obviously you can still re-sign Cam Thomas if you want, but then you can trade Cam Johnson. You can trade Nicholas Claxton. You can get off these contracts, take bad deals on, get multiple first-round picks, and fully go into your rebuild, and then run out a starting 5 of all rookies, probably not all 5 of them, but, filled in with some veterans or battered contracts down the line, and you could build yourself up from the ground and, who knows, at one point have 3 guys that look like, oh damn, they could be number 1, number 2 options. And then that's so intriguing. It makes you so dominant, similar to the Thunder. But nope, you take the same position and the same player, and you're just going to say, compete and try to be the best. Unless they really want to run 3 playmaking guards out on the wing and position-based basketball is going down that route. I don't know. But the Nets never fail to confuse me. Once again, coming out of the draft, they once do, and that's why they're a loser. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Like I said, going over all 30 teams. Another little bit of a longer video, but I appreciate it if you do watch them. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, we'll be having some more coverage here over the next couple of days. If any trades come through, with free agency right around the corner on Monday, there's going to be more and more news coming. So we'll definitely have everything posted for you guys here. So make sure to stay up to date by hitting that subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts on the draft as well. Who are your winners, losers? What other picks did you like? Who were some sleeper teams that you think did pretty solid? And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out.